So my name's Louise Sutton. I am editor of 606 on 5 Live, which is a football phone-in. I also make the women's football programme for 5 Live Sports Extra. I freelance as a producer and editor on 5 Live Sport, and I work as a freelancer at Premier League TV. We get in sort of around midday for the early game. We think about how we want to cover any stories that might have happened during the week. So for instance, this weekend we might want to do the England squad announcement, who's in, who's out, who should be in, who should be out. Or for instance, Tom Ince deciding that he doesn't want to be in the England under-21s. So we might think about whether we want to do something on social media to create a debate that we can then take into the radio programme. We have features that we set up, so for instance, on a Sunday we have an Ask Righty feature, which starts on social media. Ask Ian Wright anything. So we'll think about, we use a topical piece of music for that, so we have to think about that every week. And then the team, we give jobs to the team, so they'll have to make packs, so stats and facts and figures about each game. And then when the presenters come in, we'll have to prep them, make sure they're happy, make sure we write scripts, we liaise with news, and there's normally a late game, so we'll take live interviews from the game, so we'll be talking to the reporters at 5 Live about getting those interviews in and who we want. Okay, so for instance, I also work producing 5 Live Sport, the programme. So I might come in on a Wednesday and we've got a Champions League match. So 2 weeks ago I did Chelsea against PSG, second leg. So I'll come in, have to speak to the commentary teams, obviously, that are at Chelsea and the producers, and then build a 3.5 hour programme. So 7 to 7:45 will be build up, pick the topics, maybe cut some audio with the managers, and think about what themes that we want to talk about with the presenter, the commentator, and the summariser, who I think was Pat Nevin, but it might have been Chris Waddle. But then on top of that, 5 Live Sport is about sport, not just about football. So if there's a big story that day, for instance, England have played cricket, and we're terrible at the World Cup, obviously you need to make the conscious decision that you need to leave enough space in the programme to get that in. And we always do that before 7:30. So you would do maybe football build up to 7:15, then sports news till 7:30, and then more football build up to 7:45. And then what you're going to put at half time. And then post-match will be a bit more like 606. So you'll get a new guest to join you from the game, and then you'll get phone calls on, texters, tweets, and try and make it a sort of football conversation for the last 40 minutes of the programme. So I went to university, I went to Queen Mary, and then I went travelling for 6 months, came back and moved back to London, I worked in a bar, worked at Gap, retail outlet, and then I got 6 weeks work experience at Radio 1 Newsbeat as a broadcast assistant. So I worked there for 6 weeks, and then it got extended to 3 months, and then 1Extra was just launching, so I got an online job with them for 6 months, and then I got made staff, and I moved around between 1Extra and Newsbeat. I was there for 4 years in total, and ended up as a broadcast journalist, and then moved to sport because I loved it, but also because I wanted to travel, and sport was one of the last places in the BBC where you got good trips. My first big trip was the 2008 Beijing Olympics, where I produced sports bulletins. So obviously completely the other side of the world, so they were overnight, but it was when the best stuff was happening, because it was in the daytime in Beijing. So I wrote sports bulletins for Mark Pugac to read out during the Beijing Olympics, and then I went on a cricket tour to South Africa. Then I was tennis producer, so I did the 4 majors at least twice each. I've done Wimbledon 6 times. And what else have I done? And then it culminated, I suppose, in the 2012 Olympics, where I produced Mark Chapman and Victoria Derbyshire, the 10 till 2 slot on 5 Live. I think I'm not a nerd. I'm not a football nerd. Like, I can spot a football hipster a mile off, and I'm not one of those. But also, I'm quite journalistically sound. You know, editorially, I was an assistant editor at 5 Live Sport before I left. So I was quite high up the chain. So spotting a story has never really been a problem, you know, and or just spotting something really, really tiny that's going to make a good feature on the programme. So 2 weeks ago, when the sexism in football was happening, things were bad for FIFA, the spitting row, at the weekend we did What's the Best Thing About Football? So really, really simple. You know, we just did a social media asset that says, what's the best thing about football? And then people just got in touch. A few people called up. We got lovely stories, you know, about kids playing football in the street and the ball coming over the fence and people giving it back, and, you know, just kind of nice stories that everyone can get involved in. And we can talk about things other than spitting and technology and referees and that kind of thing. Work hard, very, very hard. There are so many people that want to do it that you just have to stand out a bit. And don't be afraid to be a bit different just because somebody's always done a programme in a certain way, or it's always sounded in a certain way, or they've always used the same guests. Don't be afraid to say, well, actually, maybe we should do it like this. And be honest with yourself. If you're not as committed as you should be, or you're not as into sport as you probably should be, then you probably need to think about doing something else, I would say. I would also probably say that don't limit yourself now to saying I want to work in radio, or I want to work in telly, or I want to work online or in papers, because I think they're all the same. Not all the same, but I mean, there is a craft to each one, but I think you have to be flexible. You have to be able to move between the platforms, because journalism generally and sports journalism is changing so quickly that, you know, you have to be able to mix it up a little bit, I would say.